Just wanted to first thank everyone for joining our Fireside chat today with Kawasaki Engines, talking about how they drove revenue through a modern digital intake process. We have a great discussion ahead of us and really looking forward to diving in. But before we do, just wanted to run through a quick agenda and highlight what we'll be covering. We're going to start out with some introductions of our speakers today. We're going to quickly touch on a state of the market. We'll get into the core content of our discussion today, which is our Fireside chat. We're going to run through a quick demo of the product that we built. We're going to wrap up with some Q&A, and we'll cover some next steps. So with that, we'll get into some introductions. I'm Scott Britton. I'm our VP of Client Growth here at Launchpad Lab. I'm joined by Tony Gondick from Kawasaki Engines and Ryan Francis from Launchpad Lab. Tony, would you mind start just doing a quick intro of yourself and your role at Kawasaki?
Certainly. Thanks, Scott. So Tony Gondick with Kawasaki and the Engines division, which is one of the many different divisions of the global Kawasaki brand. My role here in the organization is not only supporting all of the employees from a operational day-to-day support, break fix work of all the technology, but I'm also one of the chief strategists and technologists that are looking at all of the different business opportunities, working with the different business teams, and leveraging emerging technologies into both projects and sales opportunities. So it's really a multifaceted role, making sure that we can provide the right services and support, features, and functionality for a global chain of customers, distributors, resellers of our engine product.
Great. Thanks, Tony. Ryan, you mind doing a quick intro as well?
Sure. Yeah. Ryan Francis, one of the partners here at Launchpad and president. So I head up our sales team and really focus on early stages with clients and helping to make sure that we can shape good strategy, technical strategy. So my background is I used to be a developer back in the day, so I have a little bit more of a technical background. But yeah, super excited to be able to Tony, hear from you today, and I think that your story and the Kawasaki product that we built with you guys, I just think is really incredible, and so excited to be able to share it with you, and really appreciate you making the time to do this with us.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. Before we get started, I wanted to provide a quick overview of Launchpad Lab. At our core, we are a technology and product consulting firm. So we really help companies harness the power of AI and modern software through tailored consulting and end-to-end product development capabilities. So in practice, what that means is that we work with organizations to go from strategy to execution, figuring out where technology can really make the biggest impact, and then actually building digital products to meet business needs. That can be everything from modernizing operations, reducing costs, or opening up new growth opportunities. We're based in Chicago. We've been in business for over 13 years, with most of our team located in the Midwest. And over that time, we've partnered with companies across industries, so ranging from Kawasaki Engines and manufacturing to leaders in healthcare, insurance, and staffing, to name a few. Usually, organizations pull us in when off-the-shelf tools aren't cutting it, and they need something more custom built for their business. And at the end of the day, our role is to be a true partner, really helping organizations imagine what's possible with technology and then bringing that to life. So with that, I wanted to jump into a bit of the state of the industry and share some of the challenges that manufacturing organizations are seeing today. So the reality is manufacturing today is at a bit of a crossroads. A lot of companies are still stuck with manual processes and old systems that just don't keep up. You can feel that impact, whether that's slower response times, missed opportunities, teams that are stretched too thin. At the end of the day, that means productivity goes down, right? Revenue takes a hit. And worst of all, the competition gets ahead. But it doesn't have to stay that way. What we're seeing is that manufacturers who are leaning into modern technology are flipping that story completely. Now, workflows are streamlined, data isn't scattered, and teams can actually focus on what matters, building great digital products and experiences for their customers. And the payoff is real. We're seeing faster times to market, happier customers, and stronger revenue growth. You can really start to feel the momentum shift. So the bottom line here is pretty simple. The old way of is holding manufacturers back. The ones who are moving towards building more modern systems, they're not just keeping up, they're pulling ahead. And that actually sets the table perfectly for our conversation today with Tony from Kawasaki Engines, because he's right in the middle of leading this change, driving new digital ways to engage with dealers. So with that, I wanted to transition over to our fireside chat with Tony. And just a reminder, feel free to type any questions that you might have throughout the presentation in the chat. We'll have time at the end to answer some of those, so feel free to drop those in. Right, I'm gonna stop sharing so you can see our big faces here. All right. So Tony, welcome to the conversation. Thank you again for joining us. Maybe starting off with just a question on who Kawasaki Engines is. I know you provided a bit of that kind of info up front, but really what makes you guys unique in the manufacturing space?
Sure. So, as one of 40 different divisions within Kawasaki Heavy Industries, the global Kawasaki brand, our B2B business is primarily focused on build to order engines for OEMs. So we run a total B2B business model where we supply a finished product good, namely a engine, general purpose engine, to landscapers or landscaping equipment manufacturers. You'll see a lot of our engines on zero turn mowers. In some cases, you'll find them in golf carts and other accessories that are there, but our primary focus is a small profile, high horsepower engine for the zero turn market. And those products are then purchased by individual residential owners or even landscaping companies that have fleets of these lawnmowers that they use to service their own customers. So our focus on the Kawasaki dealerships is to provide parts, accessories, services to help them to provide services to their customers, but then also selling these finished goods to the OEMs that buy them and put them into the landscaping equipment.
Got it. Got it. Super helpful. I know after we started doing business together, every time I see a zero turn, I try to go check out the engine to see if it's a Kawasaki engine. So
Definitely. Oh, yes.
Just to get into a bit of the challenges your business was facing as it kind of relates to the relationships with your dealers, could you paint a picture for us of what your processes were like prior to this digital transformation effort?
So, like many manufacturers, we built a reputation over quality, and that comes from building consistent processes year over year, not changing a whole lot. That also means because we don't change frequently, a lot of the technology stack can quickly become outdated. So, for the particular effort that we worked on together in this engine replacement app, we were utilizing some really old workflow processes. And that was resulting in a lot of time and effort from a customer care perspective, from a customer perspective, trying to find the right engine to replace a Kawasaki engine or even one of our competitors' engine. There was many phone calls going into play, and we were experiencing a lot of growth challenges, trying to make that process more effective, more efficient, get some time savings out of that. And so we knew that there were technology platforms that could help us. What we didn't have was a thought leader that could help us identify and narrow down the scope of the technology choices out there into something that would work for us, work for our business model, but also be scalable and future proof so that we didn't have to revisit this again in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. Technology changing so quickly, we wanted something that would last for the long term.
Gotcha. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think I always view Kawasaki Engines as a tech forward organization. You guys have adopted a lot of new technology to help improve your business, but what would you say like the what drove the decision to move away from the legacy systems? Was there a point in time where like enough is enough and we need to modernize the way that this process works?
Yeah, I mean, there was a breaking point. It's hard to narrow down exactly when that happened, but with the success that our company has seen to date, We have 7,700 dealerships around the United States, and we've got a global distribution chain. So as we take a look at all of the different technologies that go into supporting that type of an organization, it finally came to a point where the business teams were saying, we can't keep this up. It is getting too cumbersome. It is getting too exhausting to be able to handle all of this workload. We need to do something better. We know that there's other options out there. Help us find a solution. And that's where 2, 3 years ago, I think it's been, Scott, since we met at Dreamforce, but we started talking about here's where our process is today. Here's the amount of data that we are loading into these solutions. What are other people doing? How are other organizations addressing this problem of massive data, of legacy workflows and processes to become more effective, more efficient, agile, and nimble in their workflows? How can we translate that into a win, not only for our organization, but a win for our customers as well? Because at the end of the day, we want to reduce the friction of doing business with Kawasaki, not increase it. In the landscaping industry, at our dealerships, there's already a lot of frustration, especially if an engine breaks or if a lawnmower stops working right in the middle of a job. That can create a lot of friction. Why add to that? Why add to the stress of the situation? We want to provide quick and effective solutions and answers so that you as an end user or you as a customer of ours can get on with your day. You shouldn't have to spend a lot of time dealing with paperwork and trying to work out a matrix of choices to figure out what's the best selection. And so it was those requirements that we started talking with Launchpad Labs about, and came up with this really neat and intellectual property, something that was scalable and would meet our needs and fix those requirements.
Yeah, it's a good frame up of the kind of the challenge that you were facing, Tony. And I think, oftentimes, finding and securing budget for these types of initiatives is a challenge, right? I think that's, often clients face that kind of struggle and saying, like, how do we actually build the business case around this? Could you share a little bit about how you kind of brought that to your leadership team and ultimately got buy-in for this initiative?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And a lot of it was with the help of Launchpad Labs. So we did a cost benefit analysis. We looked at really what was it taking for us in our current process to manage the dealer, to manage the customer, and to manage this workflow. So that was a staffing cost. And we held that as we have to beat this. We then, as we started looking at solutions and we looked at how we could take it out of the hands of our customer care team, and we could make more self-help processing done at the dealerships, what kind of time savings would that be? As we took a look at all of the data and how long it takes for us to manage all of that, we also started to calculate if we were to load this into a cloud-based technology, into a platform as a service technology, what would the cost savings be for that? And through that process of evaluating existing to new cost savings within human interactions versus a self-service model, the choice was really easy. Obviously, we would get more money back. There'd be a higher return on our investment if we could allow the customers to walk through a very easy to use application and process to get to the information they needed quickly and place an order with us to get that replacement product. After that, it was just a matter of going, demonstrating to leadership, here's the cost benefit analysis, here's a short demo of what is feasible and art of the possible. And through those activities, we had buy-in, and they were very eager to see this as an end result. And thankfully, Launchpad Lab was able to deliver very quickly a solution in the first phase of that effort.
Yeah, no, that's great, Tony. Thanks for that. And yeah, Ryan, would you mind kind of shedding a little light into that kind of blueprint process that we walked through Kawasaki with in terms of what that looked like on our side and some of the outputs that we had there?
Yeah, for sure. When we're coming in and starting work with a new organization, a big part of our job is to get caught up with like how things are working today. And I think Tony, your team did such a good job and gave us, the time that we needed both on site and virtually to really get familiar with, Kawasaki engines and the different processes you guys were dealing with, especially as it related to the engine replacement processes. So, what we really did was we started out by just mapping out the current state. What are the current processes there? How much time is going into those different processes, and where are some of the pain points popping up in that customer journey? So, a lot of like sort of email based, phone based processes in order to intake a dealer who's looking to replace an engine and to help guide them to a recommended engine to replace that with. I think when we started to get into solutioning, it got pretty interesting because there's a lot of different ways to potentially solve this problem. I think ultimately what we realized pretty quickly was like we needed to get your data unlocked, right? Like we needed to get your engine and spec data as well as the serial number data and the data about the engines. We needed to get that to a place where we could build a UI on top of that to enable the dealers to kind of self-service, search, find their engine that they have, figure out which engine makes the most sense to replace it with, and what would be the differences between their existing engine and the new one to make sure they're comfortable with those differences. So I think we pretty quickly realized like a lot of this project would come down to data and like started to really map out technically how we would accomplish that. So, sort of typically what this process looks like for Launchpad is we start with sort of the business process side of things, like conceptually, what would the ideal user experience be? And then we sort of move into the how. Okay, given that, how do we enable that? And a lot of times that comes down to, data strategy and sort of the architecture to connect into your systems. So fortunately, Tony and his team had done a lot of good work in advance of this in terms of you guys had made investments in modernizing onto Salesforce. Definitely think that helped, really streamline this initial phase for us. But yeah, we were able to, kind of build on top of that core Salesforce architecture with Heroku and, sort of advance that architecture you guys already had there, which was great. But yeah, overall, that's kind of the process. It really started with mapping current state, envisioning an art of the possible user experience, which included like, showing mock-ups of what that could look like, and then really mapping the technical, data strategy to get there.
Yeah, I think Ryan, one thing you called out there was kind of the data piece of it. And Tony, could you shed a little light on just like how much data there is? Because I think that's a really kind of cool part of this project of just
Yeah.
historical.
Can we quantify a lot? So, we at our manufacturing plant can produce tens of thousands of these engines a day and get those shipped out to the OEMs. So, as you take a look at day after day after day, you're essentially looking at millions of rows of data. And at our initial load of the data, I think we put in almost 15 million rows of information: engine build data, serial numbers, run rates, RPMs, various technical information about the engine. And thankfully, as Ryan pointed out, we had put the investment into some other modern technologies. So loading that data didn't take days. It actually only took a couple of hours. And that was a substantial win for us because we had a platform that could grow with that amount of data. Since going live with this in September of last year, we've loaded another few million rows of information into that same database. And it continues to perform as well today as it did on day zero when we went live.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's That's a really huge accomplishment. It's just to have the foresight to kind of get the data in a good spot, and then obviously it makes our job easy as a partner to kind of go implement. So yeah, I want to transition a little bit to kind of talking about the solution. I know we've kind of hinted at what we built. I think in just under 4 months, we helped you guys launch or build, launch, and get this experience live for your dealer network. And Ryan, would you mind kind of doing a screen share and just maybe walking us through the experience of what we built and kind of highlighting whether it's some of the things on the technology side or the experience side that kind of make it unique?
Yeah, for sure. And before I share my screen, I'll just add a couple more kind of background elements, and then I'll share my screen and walk through it. When and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong on anything here, but when you guys originally approached us, I remember a large part of the focus was on the EPA submission and tracking part of what you do with these engine replacements. I don't know if you want to quickly just give an overview of like what that is and why you have to do it, just
So
so people
yeah.
can understand that.
Yeah, so because these are carb engines, gasoline powered engines, they do fall under several purviews of EPA. So in several of our models, we are required by the government to show paperwork in a engine to engine replacement. And the original process was very complicated and had a lot of communication going back and forth between the dealership replacing the engine and our customer care team. In some cases, we needed to share photographs. We needed certified documentation saying from the dealership, yes, I did responsibly destroy this particular engine. It can no longer be used. I replaced it with this newer model. And so that was one of the requirements of this new solution is the reduction of the amount of communication and the back and forth. We wanted to enable something that was more built on a template of the EPA form that relied on e-signature collection, electronic communications, so that instead of just happening during business hours, the dealership after hours, before they opened up, they had the ability to go out and complete the paperwork, sign it, provide the photographs, and whatever else. So we were enabling more of working on their time and on their schedule rather than forcing them to work within our business hours.
Yeah, that's super helpful context. And I think as we got into that discovery, we realized that that EPA form step and submission and signing step was really the last step in kind of a multi-step process for you guys. And I think as we get into this experience that we're going to show, we really reimagine like what could this whole process reimagine look like? Not just the step of submitting the EPA documentation, but even before that, helping the dealer through selecting which engine to replace their current engine with. So I'm going to jump in here. We'll share this. All right. Is this working?
Yep, we can see it.
So most importantly is the disclaimer. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously start off with the disclaimer, make sure to get the legal stuff in there. But the first step in the process for the dealer is really to figure out what engine are you trying to replace, right? We need to know what engine they're trying to replace in order to then recommend the best engine, the most relevant and best fitting engine to replace that with. And so the first step here is there's really two ways dealers can find their existing engine. They can do it by a model and spec code, or they can do it by a serial number. And we have this sort of helpful, where to find the information tooltip here where they can quickly see, okay, here's how I can find the model and spec code. Here's how I can find the serial number that is like a specific identifier for that specific engine. And then based on that, they can figure out, which one they want to submit. So in this case, let's say the dealer is submitting a model and spec code. They put in that information, they hit continue, and they come into this experience where they can see their current engine, and they can compare it to potential alternative engines that they can replace that engine with. Essentially, and I know, Tony, you could probably talk to this better than me. I know a lot of times these engines can be quite old. It might be 30 years old or even more that you're replacing. And so, those legacy engines, there's been changes that have happened as new engines have been invented and sort of improved. And so it's really important that the dealers understand, what's the difference with these, newer models compared to the original model that I'm looking to replace.
Mhm.
And so a big part of what we did in this user experience was to try to make it as clear as possible to the dealer, what those differences is, because there might be something that matters more to their situation that would help to, even though we might recommend this engine here, they might care more about the starter being a Bendix type, and preference that engine instead. So just really making sure that it's super clear to these dealers, like what is the difference between, that our current engine and what we might replace it with. And this is really where I think, Tony, you mentioned all that kind of data as far as model and spec data and engine data. This is really where that became super important to create this experience. We needed to have all of this engine data, right, to then be able to present these options in like a self-service capacity. They're
Yeah, yeah,
honestly, yeah.
yeah, Ryan, exactly right. And one of the problems or the challenges we had to overcome was this data was not just in one location. You had R&D that had this information. You had application engineers that had this information. You had sales teams that had built up this information over the years with knowledge. So what we were able to do with this solution is get all of these teams together in a single unified solution mindset, and working together they identified, here's all the critical pieces of information that a dealership is going to need to know. So as you talked about those legacy engines, yes, the regulators are going to be different, the starters are going to be different. If it is a older machine, the opening, the space for the engine is going to be different. So they need to know all of that information. Otherwise, they could purchase a engine, which is not cheap. I mean, no engine is nowadays, but then there might be additional pieces that they would need, or it may not even fit in the requirements that they were looking for. So this was a very clear way to communicate those changes.
I see that so often too with any type of movement from a manual process to a self-service process. Oftentimes, a lot of that information is in people's heads, right? And
Yes.
so how do I think that's part of that natural course of how do you go from a manual human-led process to something that's more digital and self-service? It's like, how do you codify that information into an application, into a database, so that your customers can self-service around it. And ultimately it's a healthy exercise really for a company
It,
to go through.
it, It is, and Launchpad was really good about helping to facilitate those conversations. One group would want a piece of information they thought was important, another group didn't think it was important. And so through that conversation, through the facilitation, we got to what was the core pieces of information. And we still are able to capture a lot of that tribal knowledge based on the teams. It can still be utilized within the application, but we wanted a design element that was very concise and summarized. And Launchpad helped us to develop this table format that gave the most prevalent and important information first. And then, as you can see, we have see more information. All of that tribal knowledge, the technical notes that go along with that engine replacement, that can also be here as well. So we're not losing the tribal knowledge at all. We're still maintaining it.
Awesome. So just to kind of continue through this, so let's say the dealer kind of looks at these options and they think this AS00 engine here like makes the most sense. They can basically continue to this like see more information like Tony was talking about, and basically drill a level deeper into information about this engine. And here we also have the ability for them to accept and sort of confirm that they're comfortable with the differences that this engine has compared to their existing model. So they can go ahead and accept that, and they can add it to the cart. Now, since this is like a separate portal to the existing dealer portal that Kawasaki had, we have this sort of process that they go through to kind of move into the actual checkout process. But before they do that, we want to actually have them submit this EPA form. So we had this experience here where, and this was, a pretty manual process before, but now this is like a, automated and electronic process where they can go through and submit this formal EPA form to Kawasaki, uploading an image, and submitting the form. And this data is stored back into Salesforce where it's maintained, ultimately for government and EPA related reporting. And so just really streamlining, and like Tony mentioned, allowing these dealers to submit this form and do this workflow on their own schedule, on their own time, and not being dependent on doing that during like work hours, on the phone with someone from Kawasaki.
So, Ryan, one thing to point out here that we didn't touch on was trying to streamline this for that dealership. So, if you remember back to the first page, we did ask for a dealer number. And because they're using this system, we were able to take that dealer number and pull that information out of the CRM and backfill that form for them. Because who wants to fill out another form with all of my information? You already know who I am. I shouldn't have to tell you again what my store name is, the dealer number, or any of the contact information. So this was it was a small design element, but it saved so much time. And our dealer feedback has been very, very positive for that because it is saving so much time. So the more that we can preload that data into these forms and just collect a signature, the faster we can get through this process. And the customers appreciate that.
And at the end of the day, it's not like everyone wakes up every day and is really excited to go submit an EPA form, right? It's like,
Right.
how do we
Well,
make this as easy
yeah.
as possible, as painless as possible? And I think you've definitely done that, through exactly what you're talking about, connecting this to your core data in Salesforce to pre-fill it. And that's a really good call out.
But filling out government forms, that's a highlight of my day. I mean that I look forward to that every day.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's just...
It is. Yeah. I can't wait till the next time.
All right. Well, that's what I had to share on the demo side of things, Scott. So I'll throw the mic back to you.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. And thanks, Tony, for your engagement there. Yeah, I guess just moving on to kind of the results here. I'd love to kind of talk through, Tony, looking back from like where you started. Would you say you achieved the outcomes that you were after? And if so, like, are you able to share any kind of like high level kind of ROI metrics in terms of what the experience did?
Yeah, can certainly do that. So comparing where we were to where we are today, the feedback that we've been receiving from our customers has just been phenomenal. When we first put out the phase one of this, we did it in two phases. The first phase had a copy and paste type of format because we were still working on integration with our e-commerce site. But even then, the time savings, the efficiency gains, the automation. I wish I could play for you some of the feedback we had received from our dealers, but they were specifically calling in not with a question, but to express gratitude and excitement for this new app. They loved how easy it was to even search. If you remember back that first screen, Ryan showed a model and spec, but there was a serial number field. In all of the years of doing this engine replacement the old way, we've never been able to search for a serial number. And if you think about the type of engine that this is and the type of product that it's on, there's a lot of dust and debris and cleaning that's going on. And so those stickers on the fan housings can get wiped off. If you're bringing in a older machine, you may not know or remember any longer what the model and the spec code is, even though we put it in various locations on the engine. But the serial number is like your automotive VIN number. It is stamped on various areas of the engine, and it does not go away. So now we've enabled yet another search criteria to help the dealers find the right replacement engines. The EPA form saved a lot of time because you just needed to have a signature. We pre-filled out the form for you, give us some photographs, sign the form, it goes to the right team, it gets added to your account, and we can process that replacement request faster. So all of these added more and more time savings. When we put out the first version of this, we were monitoring the number of site visits. And for the first week, we saw maybe 100 because we had a soft launch. We did not really advertise it to the broad dealership community that we had. But the week over week growth that we saw, 100 the first week, 300 the second week, 500, 700. We're now averaging almost 1,000 site visits per week to this engine application, this replacement app. The feedback has still been really phenomenal. Then we talk about phase two, and that's really the cherry on the top of this experiment that we've done. Working with Launchpad, we were able to incorporate the replacement engine selection, and instead of forcing a customer to copy and paste it into a shopping cart, we directly did that for them. So we automated the EPA form, which was a trouble spot for us. Then we incorporated our e-commerce. So today, the dealers can search for a model spec or serial number. They can choose their engine, fill out the form automatically, and then send it to the shopping cart and complete that sale. They can also add any additional mufflers that they might need, air filters, oil products, mounting brackets, wiring harnesses, whatever is needed to complete that replacement job. And so what we have seen then is a 5 to 10x increase in the amount of replacement engines that we're selling. We can show a direct correlation to using this app to a increase in the amount of single pack engine replacement engines that we are selling to our customers. And that is a huge win for us. I won't go into any of the exact numbers, but the added revenue, the added sales is nice. What I think is even better is the maintaining relationships that we are doing with our customers. We're continuing to build trust. We're continuing to build productivity for them. We continue to maintain our quality by adding value to their day and making sure that they can service and support their customers as well as we service and support them as our customer. So that's really the big wins that we've experienced with this engine replacement app.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Tony. Great to hear that. I think, one of the wins too that we may have kind of glossed over is kind of we've talked a lot about the dealer experience here, but I know also the internal teams are using this too, right? Like as a way to do engine lookups and things like that. So, I think that's just kind of a bonus to this whole thing is, creating more efficiencies for your internal teams, especially when it does still call the customer care line. It's like, you know what? I got this app up in front of me. I can look up exactly what you need right here. So I think that's another huge win.
Yeah, you're exactly right, because the customer care team had to use the same process as the dealers. So they're flipping through books, they're looking through matrices, they're trying to find the model and spec, and okay, here's possible replacements. So now they do the same thing that the dealers do, but they're also educating the dealers that, hey, you don't need to call us for this. We've got this really great whiz-bang app out here. Try going here. Here's how you get to it through the menu system. Let me show you or explain to you how to use the app. You don't need the documentation any longer. You can throw away all the PDF files and the Excel files that you may have created or used because the app has real-time data. We continue every day to load new shipped engine information into there. So if they had an accident and they just bought the mower, we can show you the replacement because we've already got that information built into it. If you're bringing an engine from 30 years ago, we can still find it. And we can tell you, here's a more modern engine that you can replace it with. Just know you're going to have these differences. So they can help facilitate all of that and just take more of those phone calls throughout the day.
Yep.
I
Well,
think
that's Go ahead.
I think one thing to jump in on, or that I find very interesting, is that, when you initially set out with the project, it seemed like a lot of the motivation was around like sort of the experience for the dealer and removing, work for the team to have to manually manage these things and sort of the cost side, cost saving side of that. But it's amazing to see that there was actually a revenue boost and actually people are coming back and coming to Kawasaki more for this now. I wonder if that's like, what you attribute that to. Is it that the dealers now prefer doing engine replacements with Kawasaki versus competitors because this experience is easier, or just like they kind of know they're able to do it on their off hours, and so it creates more opportunities for them to work with you guys? Or yeah, how you attribute that?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. So, to our knowledge, this is the only app that is out there that is like this. And it does match the feedback that we have gotten from our customers. No other engine producer has an app like this that is very streamlined and concise, simplified, easy to use. A lot of manufacturers still utilize the documentation route, but
Right.
what the dealers tell us is because it saves so much time, because it's available 24/7, they don't have to worry about calling in. They might just to double check if they only use the app for the first time, they may still have that phone call come in. But after that, we have seen a reduction in the amount of engine replacement calls coming to our call centers. So that is a testament that the information is correct, that it is trusted, and our dealers, our customers are finding it more effective to use this method in the course of their day, whether it be before hours or after hours or during business hours, it doesn't matter. So I think all of that combined does help. And it has converted our IT office from a cost center to a profit center. It was through the development of this app and the added revenue that it brought in that really offset the
Hmm.
cost of having an IT
Hmm.
organization. And really,
How
that's
cool is
looking
that?
at.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, it makes me feel better. So rather than having an expensive software and hardware cost year over year, we're now offsetting that of implementing emerging technology by having the added revenue and sales from this engine replacement app. And
Hmm.
it's only just beginning. We've put out two phases. As I said earlier, technology is always changing. Now with generative AI, there's even more possibilities to create agents or suggested selling techniques to provide more information through intelligent chatbots or artificial intelligence on the website. You could realistically talk with a learning model, ask it questions, and it could look at technical documents and provide answers to that. It could look at what others are buying and say, oh, hey, remember, you're going to need these other items to go with that replacement engine. It could make other suggestions based on the context of the conversation. So we think we're right on the edge and the verge of another major leap in enhancements for this application simply because of how quickly and how smart artificial intelligence is adding productivity to businesses.
And I'd imagine that this initial investment that you made and sort of building this data foundation, I think it puts you in a good place to do that, right? Because
Yes.
ultimately, for generative AI to be successful, it needs to be grounded on your content, your data. And so it needs to have that access to be able to know what are the differences with these engines, and to have that information on what those differences mean to then be able to make the right suggestions. So
And that goes along with decisions to move to cloud-based technologies rather than on-premise physical hardware, because then
100%.
you're always having to keep up or catch up to technology changes. So a lot of this is through the suggestions that Launchpad provided to us. Keep in mind, you're going to have to future-proof this. Keep in mind, you got to have scalability. You got to choose databases, data storage locations. You got to have design elements that fit with your customer base and with your industry. Because if you don't hit all of these low hanging fruits, these small targets, then at the end of the day, you're going to have to revisit this and you're going to have to redo this again because you have all of these outside influences that are affecting your customer bases. They're going to want these technologies incorporated into their interaction with Kawasaki because they get it through other means, through the Amazons, through the Walmarts, through the Targets. All of those organizations are creating an influencer on the customer base. And that is forcing us as manufacturers to reevaluate and revisit all of our workflows and our interactions with our customers.
Well, this has been great. This has been great. I think, just doing a quick time check here, I want to leave a few minutes for some Q&A at the end here. But wanted to thank you, Tony, for your time on this. And while the fire wasn't real, the talk was. So thank you so much for thanks so much for making the time. And yeah, we're going to pull up a few questions here that have come in. The first one here is how involved were other departments in this process? I know like IT led it, but can you talk through like how that kind of spanned out beyond IT?
Yeah, we recognized it was very important to have all of the teams involved in the customer interactions engaged in this because at the end of the day, they would be getting many of the phone calls. And as I mentioned earlier in the chat, each team had different tribal knowledge that they had built over the years about these engines. So we made sure that on day one, we had a representative from R&D and application engineering, that we had representation from our customer care, who gets the phone calls, from the sales teams, who would be going out and encouraging our customers to use this during site visits. And each of those teams participated to a different degree. They tested it based on their knowledge and in their interactions with the customers. So it was important for us to get that. I think as we were doing the design elements and the discovery, they participated in those meetings. They didn't participate as much in development, but they did participate in the testing. And of course, we all celebrated when we went to production because of the feedback that we were getting. So I would say it's incredibly important if you're thinking of doing something like this, get all of the key stakeholders involved on day one. Don't wait until the last minute to get them engaged.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Maybe one final question here, and I guess how important was dealer feedback throughout this process? Did you engage with the dealers during the process, or were you kind of designing to meet their needs based on what you think they like?
A lot of it came from the interactions with the sales teams because they're closely aligned to our customers. They hear day in, day out how difficult or easy it is to do business with Kawasaki. So having them involved in day one was important. The customer care team that gets the frontline calls every day, also providing that feedback, that was also important. And so we felt that we had a very strong product in phase one. And the feedback coming from that first few weeks demonstrated that we had hit the target on that. But we were also continuing to gather feedback in between phase one and phase two. So as the development was being done, we knew we had to get the shopping cart integrated. That was a piece of feedback. But there were also little design tweaks. We had originally started with a good, better, best category on the replacement engines. That went into preferred and alternate based on feedback. So a lot of what you see today is simply taking the feedback through those phone interactions and the site visits and making the small tweaks. A lot of folks will call it agile development, and it very much is because they're short windows of changes that we can implement very quickly and cost effectively to get them out in time for people to notice and to start using them.
That's great. Okay. I think we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to run through some next steps here. Um, Go from there. Yeah, so next up here, we're going to share some links here in the chat. We did a digital intake talk between Ryan here and Steph Kolberg, our VP of Marketing recently. So check out the link there to that discussion. Also sharing the more detailed Kawasaki case study here if you want to dive deeper into the story we just talked through. There's a lot of great content on that case study. And then we're also sharing a link to our Discovery Space Navigator offering that really helps you uncover what's worth building to move your business forward. So lots like we did with Kawasaki here. We want to surface the biggest opportunities to help really give you a clear roadmap to digital solutions that drive impact. So it's a complimentary offering that Launchpad offers, and I encourage you to check it out. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. And so thank you again, Tony, for your time today. We're proud to be partners with you and look forward to what's next.
Certainly. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much, Tony. Definitely appreciate it.
Yep.
See y'all.